Gillespie's book, Singing for the Self-Conscious, is a bit like the voice you just want to rise up from the pages of your journal that you've just scribbled all your troubles on. It's a book aimed at the singer who finds themselves reeling with self-consciousness, avoiding singing, holding back in their performances, and generally just lacking some self-confidence. It strives to pull us from the confines of our minds and into the present to increase our self-confidence and to help us seize opportunities to be authentic and at will to our creative spirit. It's a really easy read and a bit like a self-help book without any of that mind-graying terminology that often comes with academia and which makes us think that maybe the author spent a little bit too much time being intimate with a thesaurus. This book is a mapped out 30-day program with 8 different steps covered across 3 main sections: your sense of self, evolving your craft, and focusing outward. Topics include things like what self-consciousness actually is, tips on how to encourage positive self-awareness, addressing limiting beliefs and growth mindset, the importance of technique and discovering style in reducing self-consciousness, and a variety of different exercises from getting to know yourself and exposing mean thoughts to listening exercises and acting tasks. Becky is an extremely relatable author, sharing some of her own experiences with self-consciousness, which is a bit like looking in the mirror. Will we step away from this book immediately transformed, leaving behind our self-consciousness and hyper self-awareness? Probably not. After all, these changes in our beliefs and mindset require us to do the hard grafting. But it does show us that there are multiple ways to get started. And it's a bit like the hand which is holding the door open for change. Becky Gillespie, are your ears burning? Because I've literally just finished giving my review of your book, Singing for the Self-Conscious, which, by the way, I devoured in about 2 days.
Wow, that's so good to hear. Yeah, it is an easy read, I think.
It's a lovely, easy read. And as I said in my review, it's a bit like the voice that you want to come out of the journal that you've just written all your troubles in.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's really nice to hear. Yeah, it's quite a personal book that I wrote from my own struggles, and it's really focused towards students and people going through the same thing.
Yeah, and this is something that you've actually written between the episodes that you have been on the Singing Teachers Talk podcast. I think it's been 139 episodes since you were first on talking to Lynn Hilton. And so what was it in that period or from reflecting on your experiences that made you think this is the time, this is what singers need?
Oh, okay. Well, when I was on talking to Lynn before, it was about me being on MasterChef and having done a whole career change and gone to work as a chef. And you know, there are lots of learning curves from that. While I was working as a chef, you know, and I think partly I did my career change because I was having these issues and I felt kind of like a faker. You know, I was doing all the singing teaching and had kind of reached a really great level in the industry, teaching sort of 8 hours a day. Then we went off and moved to Australia. But partly in my head, I was kind of like, I'm a faker. I was having that kind of feeling. And I was also thinking, I'm this, you know, high level singing teacher. However, I'm not out there singing myself because I was always so stifled as a performer. So part of my career path journey was kind of shying away from singing teaching, partly for that reason. And then, you know, went off to become a chef, and you know, that's when I chatted to Lynn about it. And then when over the pandemic, I just, you know, the restaurants shut straight away. And during that time, I was working as a chef as well. I just kept thinking, what a great job this was. And I kept thinking about what I had experienced. Why was I this type of person? Why can some people just go out and just come out and sing and perform and they have no problems, whereas I was always really stifled? So it was always ticking over in my head. And a few things happened, you know. One of the chefs in the kitchen was actually listening to the radio one day, and it was one of my students, and I could hear it across the kitchen. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I just had these realizations of, what am I doing? I really love that job. And, you know, surely I can overcome this. And then when the pandemic struck, the restaurants quit, shut overnight. And I just had this really just big thought. I've got to come to terms with this. And so writing the book was actually me coming to terms with my own self-consciousness, why I had that. And the thoughts just came kind of pouring into me. And then I started researching and I started writing down. I always say that the book kind of wrote itself because it was like I was riding on this wave of inspiration that I think all of these things were really ready to come out. I was so frustrated having been, a singer and a teacher, but not able to push through those kind of last barriers. So I got to grips with ways to get through it. And I'm still working through it right now. I'm still a self-conscious person, but I've come on leaps and bounds and it feels so good. And it feels so good to help other singers with it too.
What does it actually mean to be self-conscious?
Yeah. So self-consciousness is, you could say, a heightened sense of self-awareness. But self-awareness can be kind of verging on the positive, and it can also start to verge towards the negative. So self-consciousness is that kind of preoccupation also with how we perceive ourselves and how others perceive ourselves. And that's where it starts to verge towards the negative. And so we can kind of come out of that sense of, okay, I'm experiencing this, to how are they perceiving me? And I think that's a really good way of thinking about self-consciousness.
Yeah. And is there a difference between self-consciousness and something like performance anxiety?
Performance anxiety also, again, we're looking at scales. Performance anxiety is when it sort of airs onto the, I'm having physical reactions. I really can't, I can't complete what I'm doing. I would say then it goes even further. And that's when we may need to look at kind of getting some outside help. Or self-consciousness is this, this preoccupation of how we're being perceived. And it can be really niggly. It can be really annoying.
Mm.
I think it's very much on the same spectrum of anxiety. So we look at it and we can kind of, if you're looking to overcome your self-consciousness, it can be helped by the same kind of things that we would be looking to overcome anxiety.
Yeah. And what sort of things would manifest in us as symptoms of self-consciousness? Are there some common signs that we can look out for in our students?
Yes, absolutely. There's it can manifest itself in quite a few different ways. So number one, like a preoccupation with how others are perceiving, as opposed to, when we sing, we're singing to express. So that's what are we doing this for, kind of thing. If you're thinking that they're really preoccupied in how it's coming across, there is that. Then it can manifest itself in some kind of negative behavioral ways. So for example, like avoiding practice, not liking the sound of one's own voice, or kind of, I think the avoidance, and that can kind of be sort of self-sabotaging. And this is a tricky one with students because sometimes that's out of our awareness. They might not be aware that they're actually doing that. I used to do that myself. I would be so kind of worried and stifled about a performance that I would then not even go there in terms of wanting to practice for it. And then no wonder then why on the performance day I was sort of a basket case. I find that the way of getting through things is kind of, it really helps if we take the steps beforehand. And then in terms of a performance, then you're kind of ready to go, because you can't be multitasking so many things in the actual performance time. It's just too much to take on.
There's an exercise in your book about understanding how self-consciousness manifests, and you've mentioned some of them there, the avoidance to self-sabotage. I for sure can relate to the one of holding back.
So not fully expressing, and allowing ourselves to let go. So I find that, actors usually have this experience where they've been trained to express outwards, and us in contemporary music, we often haven't done so much of that. So number one, we just don't have the practice of it. So it can be really prevalent, when we're feeling self-conscious, to kind of, we haven't had the practice of kind of turning externally. And so holding back is one way that it can manifest. Yeah.
Yeah. In your book, you mention about being this 3-year-old running up and down the hallway, singing opera into a hairbrush. So if you feel comfortable to and want to share, reflecting on your experiences, did you notice the moment when you started to feel inhibited and started to feel self-conscious about singing in front of people?
During the teenage years is probably a very common time when this starts to happen. We start to become more self-conscious, whereas when we're little kids, we're kind of we're just so out and having fun and dancing like no one's watching. But then that filter tends to come on during that adolescent period, and that is also typically the time when some form of trauma. It's so common, and I'm sure you've seen this too, Alexa, in your studio, when people say, oh, I had an experience once where my choir teacher said, oh, you can't sing high. It could be it could be anything, just a passing comment, but it's how it's perceived in our mind. I had that when I remember having to go for an audition for a school choir, and was just being told, oh, you can't sing high, you'll never sing high, kind of thing. And it was just that moment, I just really believed that. My brain latched onto it. So I think that was a key time. Or if we've ever had the experience where people, you're singing and someone's laughing, or you perceive someone laughing. I had that one, and that one's really, really common too. Parents saying things. This is the time when our mind starts to develop these self-beliefs, and that's a huge part of how we see the world, our belief system.
As a teacher now, I know we're kind of taught to have open-ended questions and lead the student somewhere or ask them how the experience was. Do you ever get really worried that anything you say is going to end up being one of these limiting beliefs for a singer, even if the intention was absolutely not to offend or to create a worry in them?
Absolutely, all the time, because that is how we perceive things. It really is, it stems from our own mind, and in a way we can't avoid this. But I do worry about that, how we feed back to students. On the other hand, you want to give open and honest communication as well. So I think what we can do to empower our students is just to help them to understand that what I'm saying isn't necessarily an opinion. So we must kind of form our own beliefs, and understand that when we have heard something from anyone, and typically this comes from a younger place. So when our belief system is really forming, so parents or teachers from a younger age, this is when it's really rife. But we can give our students the awareness just to know that they are in control, and make their own choices, and kind of take in information and be able to question it. And that's a really great tool that we can always use, in our lives, and with our singing. Just, is this true? Is it the way that am I perceiving this differently? It's like this example of, let's say if you see your friend walking across the street, and they don't wave at you, so your first reaction might be, oh, they're angry at me. Or it could be that your friend didn't have their glasses on, or had their headphones on. It was just sort of like off in their own world. So our mind always wants to make up some kind of story, and it's usually based around ourselves, especially if we're the type of people who have, not so much of a inflated ego. And most of us artists are quite sensitive types. And so this is really common, I think, for people to feel self-conscious or underconfident about their own singing.
Yeah. You mentioned also that you only really sang in front of your family a handful of times, and that it was actually easier for you to sing in front of complete strangers. And I can absolutely relate to that. If my parents ever asked me to sing when I lived at home with them, I would be like, well, not really, but if you absolutely have to, you have to sit outside the room. Or if you're in the same room as me, you have to turn around. You cannot look at me. So, why
Yes.
do you think it's sometimes more of a challenge to perform in front of people we know and
Mm-hmm.
who love us and who will be our
Yes.
supporters than it is a whole bunch of strangers?
Yes, absolutely. This question comes up all the time. Why can I sing in front of an auditorium full of complete strangers, but I just crumble when it's in front of someone that I love or my friends? And the answer is really simple. It's because it means so much more. That their opinion to you means a lot more, and they know you as well. So it's almost like they can sort of see. They can see your through you, like transparency. And so it just makes us feel that extra bit more vulnerable, a bit more exposed. But I always say as well, that is actually the beauty of singing, this kind of vulnerability. And it's like no other instrument has this connection to this sense of self, And so through all of this, while that can be a painful, very exposing thing, that is also the sheer beauty. So it's a really great way of kind of pushing through that and expressing. But also the way of getting over anything is just to kind of have more and more awareness of it. So even just conversations like this are going, why do I feel more self-conscious around those type of people? Just knowing that will help you to manage it and keep it at a level in check.
Yeah. So, what would be the first step that you would advise after acknowledging it for singers to get going on reducing these feelings of self-consciousness?
Hmm. Well, yes. So I think acknowledging it is a huge one. And I wrote this book as a kind of step system.
Mhm.
So I kind of identified, these different areas that we can look at. And so acknowledging it is one. I mean, I've got my book in front of me because it's quite helpful to kind of look at what I've written and just sort of see it in a in a format like that. So we look at when we're talking about our belief system, so kind of looking within these beliefs and going and questioning them, like we mentioned, like is that true? Is this thought helping me? You can almost be a detective or take your thoughts to jury kind of thing, and that takes again sort of self-reflection and analysis. And then it's really, really important after that to make sure that you've got your bare bones. So what I would say, your technique, I am quite a technique singing teacher, despite I do a lot of talking about this type of thing, developing confidence. And I just truly believe in the power of being able to drive your car, so can you navigate? Because again, this all comes up around performances. So you can't be doing a performance clearly and smoothly and without having kind of that layer of foundation. So I think building up a solid technique is one of the most important things that singers can do. So that way, when they go to performance, they have a huge part taken care of, so they're not trying to multitask. A lot of this reducing self-consciousness is about reducing the amount of things that we are trying to juggle, and we try and do it too late. So we must do it in the background, and then when we get to performance time, we're kind of ready to go. So I'd say develop your technique, develop your style. Those are really great ways of next steps, next fundamental steps.
Yeah. And I guess there's no like exact route through this. And as you say, your book is like a 30-day program of 8 steps to explore. So would you say that we could dip in and out of them and pick different tasks at different stages? Or would you say there's maybe a little bit more of a linear process that you would advise?
No, absolutely. You can dip in and out because everyone is going to have kind of like gaps or places where they need to repair. And so could completely take this book and just open to any page, and that's the way I wanted to write it as well. Just get something out of that, even from just quotes, from people that I have in there, just inspirational ideas, just to give a little tweak of or a burst of confidence or positivity that you might need in that moment, or if you're kind of feeling quite reflective, there's a lot of reflective exercises that you can do, such as who am I, like what are my values, and sort of drawing singers through that question, because I do see that can be part of it too, just developing that sense of self and confidence with that, and being unique, and being okay to be yourself. First we must accept ourselves and accept our voice too, in order to feel more confident when we sing and less self-conscious.
Yeah. There's a mention of how we can't really teach someone to be less self-conscious or more confident. So what's the role of the teacher in helping their students to feel like they are more confident and less held back by these self-conscious thoughts?
Yes. Oh, wow. So the role of the teacher really is a facilitator. And the teacher can take on so many different roles, and there's so many kind of crossovers. We can be friends, we can be, slight therapists, we can be, confidants, and it's quite, again, it can be quite a close thing being someone's teacher. Because they really show us their vulnerabilities, and they really go through change with us. So yeah, it can be a delicate thing, and I think it's important, like we mentioned earlier, we're not just giving information, go do this, do that, because overcoming these feelings of self-consciousness and gaining vocal confidence is a kind of personal journey that we all must go on. So, but what we can do as teachers is facilitate, these ideas, or even posing questions. One of the best ways that you can help someone is to just pose a simple question, very, very neutrally, even just why do you think you might be feeling this way, so that they are looking within, coming with the answer. But one of the reasons why I love being a teacher is because of this closeness, and just being able to help someone feels so good, and also feels so good to see someone get through things and get better and have those aha moments. It feels amazing as a teacher.
Can we actually ever get over self-consciousness? Or would you say it's something that we kind of have to manage on a consistent level?
Yeah, good question. I think we can absolutely get through it. It might still be there, but it can be operating at a level that is sort of if we look at just arbitrary numbers, it can go from, say, an 8 or a 9, where it's like really kind of taking over our thoughts and infiltrating in, to, okay, I can feel I'm a little bit, like that, because what would it be if we didn't have a self-consciousness? Serves a purpose, because what would it be if we didn't have it? It would be like, the drunk person at the pub, like with no kind of filter in their mind, just, so it does serve a purpose. And I will say that artists, again, and people in the music industry, we tend to be sensitive people, so I feel that many artists, will have this kind of sensitive side that it tends to flare self-consciousness up. But it's same with anxiety. It's how we can deal with it. It's not the anxiety that is the problem. It's how we are perceiving it, what it is, and how we're getting through life with it.
I'm just pressing the pause button on the podcast for a very brief moment to invite you to book your free BAST call. If you've been thinking about joining the BAST community through one of our courses, but you just don't know which option is the best for you, then why not book your free Zoom chat with our very own Kimberly George, who has all the answers. Head over to basttraining.com/book-a-call/ and click that big blue button. That's basttraining.com/book-a-call/. Now, where were we?
When I was doing some research and putting together a presentation for Vocology and Practice, and actually an episode for the Singing Teachers Talk podcast, all around imposter syndrome and low confidence and overwhelm, I came across Valerie Young's work, who works a lot in imposter syndrome. And she says that sometimes at the end of her presentations, she's listed a whole bunch of things that people can do. And I think at the back of your book, you've got about 30 steps that people could take to choose a different thought process or a different outcome for their self-consciousness. But Valerie Young talks about how people come up to her at the end of her presentations and say, well, what else can I do, without having tried some of the stuff first? So I guess this is a question about compliance. And of course, we can't make anybody do anything or make steps towards change. But how can we encourage it more in our students? Let's really give this a good go. And how do we continue to be the cheerleader if maybe they're a bit reluctant to do anything about it?
Oh gosh, wow, Alexa, what a great insight and what a great question. Just that question alone is so helpful for a teacher to think, yeah, am I doing enough here? So I would say also that in singing teaching, there may be a kind of feel of we've got an hour together, and there's so much that we can cover, but I think what you could do is even maybe, well, knowing that student and what the issues might be, and obviously taking notes on your students, and maybe having a session or even like a section let's say at the end where you're recapping it, and you can pose them a question at the end. Go, have you thought about this, or are you doing this, and what are your next steps? So to leave that as part of their homework, and also are you supplying your students homework? So that would be a great thing to do. I offer these strategy sessions for my students. So for my regular students, so it's sort of like, let's catch up where we're not trying to get something done vocally, where we can just kind of take a step back, look at the bigger picture and how you're going to get there. So that kind of thing. And wow, I mean, imagine how much that could improve teaching if we did that, with our students. And it's also letting them know that we're here for them on deeper levels, rather than just getting through some exercises and then applying it to a song.
So where can our listeners actually get a copy of your book, and how much pocket money will it be to set aside?
Yes, so it's on Amazon, and that is, I think it's about £13. I think you can buy used versions on there too. You can also get it on Kindle, so you can get it on an audiobook. And I recorded that audiobook. If you listen to it, you can think of me, because I didn't have a fancy vocal booth or anything. I recorded it like inside a china cabinet. I stuffed it with pillows and went in there. I had this microphone, which, oh, actually you could see it's being held together with a candle holder, because one of my kids ripped off the bottom of it, or broke it, fell on the floor.
I love that.
And I think the audiobook is something like £3 or something. But I've had good feedback about that too, that it's just so great this day and age where we can get information so easily like that.
I've put together a bunch of scenarios that I thought you might be able to help us with if we face these things ourselves, or if we come across a student who is a bit like the characters I've made up. And I've had to add foodstuffs to their name because, of course, you have a MasterChef background. So no alarms there.
I love that.
Our first one is 15-year-old Carly Custard, who has a musical aspiration and takes singing lessons every week. but she feels extremely self-conscious, especially when asked to make unusual sounds like whinging like a baby or meowing like a feisty cat. And I think this goes back to our talk on adolescence and how that can feel like a very uncomfortable time. I mean, there's so much going on during that period. Our voices are developing as well as our bodies and our brains. There's a lot going on at school. We're being asked to make choices in our careers at like 15. We're also navigating maybe first heartbreaks, figuring out who we are in the world, appearance hang up, social media. Like, I would not go back there for love nor money. But in singing, a lot of the time, it does require us to make some really questionable sounds and ones that can actually be quite fun if you let yourself get to that space. So how can we help our teenagers like Carly Custard feel a little bit more okay with meowing and quacking and doing all those sorts of bonkers things?
Yeah, great question. I've had a few Carly Custards coming through too. So I think, again, this is where, going back to your singing teacher question, it's nuanced. You know, our role is to read signals from the student as well. So if Carly Custard was so uncomfortable, you know, just I would look at my strategy, you know, am I going, make this sound, and she just is so uncomfortable, so we need to try a different approach. Can we, first of all, maybe using something that she likes, I mean, being student led, you know, so let's say she really loves I don't know, Dua Lipa or something, we could listen and hear these sounds coming out. Say, hey, can you hear? She's doing this kind of sound. So getting that awareness that way. You know, making it fun, you know, rather than just giving an exercise, but making it a little bit more fun, laughing and smiling. I mean, that goes a long way, you know, making light of the situation. But I think mainly the answer is to really read the student and see how much of a level of discomfort is this providing, and what can I do to kind of help that. And if it's really uncomfortable, they're really not doing it, then just drop it and try something else. You know, don't be afraid to change up the approach, but go with what they like as well first. You can't lose with that.
Yeah. Scenario 2 involves Stuart Savaloy, who has been a vocal coach for 5 years, but when he needs to demonstrate a sound, vocal quality, or an exercise, he feels so uncomfortable and self-conscious and worried that his student is going to think he's a terrible teacher if he gets it wrong. So how could Stuart work to reduce these moments of self-consciousness being the teacher in the room?
Oh, wow. I got a little bit distracted by his name, Stuart
Savaloy. I know there's a weird connotation in that, I think.
But I can
Filthy.
really relate to Stuart Savaloy, being that I am a self-conscious person, and also being that I never went to acting school. You know, I have so many friends in the musical theater industry, and I really noticed the difference. And it's sheer practice. You know, it's sheer practice and awareness. So I really noticed that. And so I would say what Stuart Savaloy could do would be to go away and have a plan before he's coming in to do it. You know, go, okay, I could try this out. Even talking to a friend who may have done this type of work, that kind of work of helping people, icebreakers, things to help people come out of the shell, to look at approaching it differently. And also, I would say Stuart needs to stay in his lane as well. So doing things that he feels comfortable with too, before going and teaching something that he might be uncomfortable with. I think that's quite important.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong at all with actually saying out loud to the student, this is something I struggle with too. You mentioned it in your book about actually, if we just say it when, you know, I'm feeling a bit nervous today, actually, I feel so much better. And I remember it was only a couple of weeks ago, we were doing something in a session and I went to example something and I cracked like an egg. And I was like, okay. And I said, oh, you know, maybe don't do it like I did it because this is what happened in my voice because I don't think I had this in place. And it was fine. And nothing happened. I wasn't considered rubbish, I don't think. I just was
No,
considered as a human being in a room who could relate to the person having the same struggle.
it's so true, because when you hear someone just kind of open up that, hey, this, I'm feeling like this too, it really does help just kind of put a damper on the nervy situation, because often, students come to us and they're feeling quite nervous. It's interesting concept, the teacher being nervous too. And so, yeah, I think being open and honest in the communication is a wonderful way.
Number three is Angela Arancini, who has aspirations to be in theatre, but she feels really hung up on the way she looks and worried about how people might pick out stuff in her appearance, and it's blocking her being able to connect to the story. So, what could Angela do in her work to reduce these feelings? And I can absolutely relate to this. I always think, are my ears sticking out? Is someone
Yeah.
thinking that I'm ugly? And like all those things that get into your head. So, what could
Mm.
Angela do?
Yes. So two things. Number one, um, hear the thoughts, because she might, because often any self-consciousness can, it's like this whir of nervous energy, thoughts in, and they can go so fast, and thoughts come so quick. So if we can slow them down, she might not even be realizing that all the thoughts she's having, writing them down, and so that she can take her mind to court, so that she
Mm.
can question the thoughts. And there's actually a nice exercise that you can do alongside that too, which I'll go over in a minute. But the other thing I would say is that when we're playing a character, the great thing about that is that we do want to go into the character. So just really, self-consciousness is that preoccupation with ourselves. Whereas, and again, I think this is why it can be a little bit more prevalent sometimes in contemporary artists versus musical theater artists. They're so used to coming out of themselves and being really dialed into the character. Whereas when we're singing contemporary music, we're singing as ourselves. We are ourselves, and there's a rawness in that. So if Angela Arancini is trying to go into theater, well, that's great, because she can really just get into that character. And with that, she might need to make those funny noises and make funny faces. And oh, actually, there's so much she can do, because I'm thinking now that what also she needs to do is record herself, watch herself back, because we do need to pair up what we think we look like and what we do look like. And often the students can be so surprised that, oh, that's not as bad as I thought. I'm feeling so self-conscious. When I watch myself back, I can see. And they also get so many awarenesses of oh, right, I can see that when I'm smiling, when I'm looking out, I look so much better. I didn't realize how withdrawn I was, So recording ourselves is a powerful tool. It helps us kind of calibrate what we sound like, what we look like in our heads, and the reality. I was just going to advise this great exercise, and I learned this when I was teaching at ACM with Lynn Hilton. So she had us go through it, and what it was you pair up with a partner, and you sing for each other. And then you record down everything that you were thinking as you were singing, and you record down all the thoughts that you were having. And usually these thoughts were really mean, really mean. Like, you sound horrible. Your high notes are so squeaky, or you cracked on that note. You made a mistake. And then you kind of swap the notes. Then you sing again. You have the person read what you had said to yourself. And it's so shocking, because it sounds so horrible coming out of someone else's mouth. And that you would never say that to your friend. You would never
Yeah.
say that to a friend, but we say it to ourselves all the time. So this is an awareness exercise of how we perceive ourselves, how we talk to ourselves.
And is that something that a teacher could do with their student, or do you not advise that? Yeah.
No, absolutely. A teacher could, it would be a really great idea to have this kind of pairing exercise where you just, number one, I think it's that reflection exercise of what are you thinking about as you're singing? You know, let's pause for a moment and just slow that down so that we can see clearly what's going on in your head. Just that alone could be helpful.
Yeah.
And then it sounds quite cruel to read it back to them, but if you read it back out loud, you kind of realize, oh gosh, I'm not having very nice thoughts about myself.
Yeah. And lastly, we have Jamie Jackfruit. By the way, jackfruit is grim.
Really?
It's so grim.
I think it tastes like juicy fruit gum.
Tastes to me, well, I don't know where I got mine from, but mine tasted like cat food.
I think it looks like cat food, doesn't it?
Well, I've only had it the once. I tried to have jackfruit and pineapple burgers because I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to be really, 21st century about this. And I thought, oh no, I need
Yeah.
the beef.
I know. I think people use it as a meat substitute now because it's got that texture like pulled pork or
Yeah.
something like that. But I think there's a way of preparing it that you need to do. It's all in the spices and the sauce, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it tasted like pulled crap when I had it, so I'm not having that again.
Uh,
But Jamie Jackfruit feels so self-conscious in their singing lessons that even making a speech-like sound in a game feels extremely difficult. So, firstly, thinking about it from Jamie's point of view, what could they do when even the smallest of tasks feels uncomfortable?
yes. Okay. So we want to dial right down into taking just one step at a time. So Jamie Jackfruit is really suffering from a lot of overwhelm, and we need to take very, very small steps. Even going back to speaking voice, and just finding what Jamie is comfortable with, and taking it from there, not trying to move too forward too fast, just small steps. And again, going for, I think, what is pleasurable for someone, finding that and then working from there. Because I think maybe also as voice teachers, we can be, guilty sometimes of maybe trying to, we want to get the student somewhere, and we know that we can do it. We know that we can make leaps and bounds, but sometimes the student just needs to process what they can process in that moment. And that might be just singing. Jamie Jackfruit might just need to sing for a month, every single lesson, just sing at someone. Then we can go, hey, while you're singing, could you try, could you add a little bit of this, or could you sing it on a different sound, or take it really slow, one step at a time, go with what Jamie's comfortable with.
Yeah. And from the teacher point of view, how might we be able to, as you say, I totally can relate to this as well. We think that we have to do a lot in a particular hour because they have goals. You don't want to be seemingly taking money for what seems to you like not very much, but to the student might seem like instrumental. But what can we do if we know that we've got, say, an hour with someone? How can we fill an hour with somebody who is so self-conscious like Jamie Jackfruit that making any sound is really difficult?
Yeah, so again, we can, and don't underestimate the power of them just being there. They've come for a lesson on their own accord, and again, it's taking our own agendas away and just going, what will be most helpful to someone like this in this moment? And it might be not giving them all the knowledge that I have in my mind, which would just cause more overwhelm. It might be just being with them, just allowing them to sing. I have to do this all the time. I have to get myself to take a step back and just let them sing. I had an experience the other day of someone who had been coming to me for a few weeks and I realized it would come to the end of our session together, and I hadn't reached the end of the song. We hadn't kind of gone over the whole, and I thought, oh my goodness, I've been so focusing on the technique and working different angles of the song. He didn't actually get to the end of the song that he wanted to sing, and I felt so guilty about that. So it's just making sure to know, what does this person need and want to do, and then how can I assist them? I think it's always maybe taking a step back and going, how best can I assist this person? What's the main thing that they need to look at, and that might be something to do with being comfortable.
Yeah. And we can take some of your strategies in your book and maybe implement those and just take breaks and reflect. And maybe then Jamie will start to feel a little bit more comfortable to make different sounds. Or
that's it. I mean, would you mind if I read some of the useful and practical strategies?
Yes, please.
In the book, just to give a little bit of a taster. So maybe teachers could have this, or even own your own if you're doing this for yourself. So here's some kind of practical ones. Have more fun with it. Hey, how's that? We take ourselves so seriously, don't we? Just how about if we just have more fun? Sing more. So often we're just not singing enough. We need to kind of sing more through our day. We can get rid of those mean thoughts, like we say. We can journal the thoughts and the worries. We can meditate and breathe. Stop and meditate and breathe. Make strange noises and faces regularly. This, like it or not, this is a part of singing. When our singing voice is an instrument, so we need to play it high, we need to play it low. We've got feelings that are attached to that. That might come with, some strange noises, some strange faces. Expression is part of our singing, so we must do it in order to not feel self-conscious about it. Video yourself, sing in front of a trusted friend. Sing outside in the open air. That would help get rid of self-consciousness. If you can't do that, have a solid technique. It's just like a little checklist of things that you can go through. Are you doing this? Are you doing this? Express your feelings when you sing. That's a kind of a really nice one to do, because, when we're feeling self-conscious, we're kind of trapped thinking about ourselves. And one of the biggest realizations I ever had as a singer was, oh gosh, it's not about me. It's about kind of, I'm expressing feelings, but it's not about me being within that. It's about showing the audience, because this is a performance. And that is an amazing way of getting rid of self-consciousness, because you're pushing that out and you're allowing your audience in and turning your focus externally. That really changed my singing when I started to do that, because being self-conscious, I was really focused internally. And now I really practice on making my focus go externally. And ironically, that tends to make me feel more too when I express it outwards.
Yeah. And I think that's a lovely thing that is in your book, are the permission slips that you can actually sign physically and just read aloud. I declare that in this session or in this moment, I am going to, and whatever you want to get out of it, because actually you're then physically, contractually obliged, one might say, in your mind to be okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's something in that, signing the permission slip for yourself. And that's why I wanted to make it just as practical as possible, and to help, the accountability, like you said, too.
Hey you! If you're enjoying the Singing Teachers Talk podcast, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We are committed to bringing you engaging conversations and valuable insights from experts across the field of voice. By subscribing, it means we can continue to do that. You'll never miss an episode, and you'll be helping to spread the word to other singing teachers, vocal coaches, and overall voice nerds. So subscribe to this channel now and just watch your teaching grow.
So you mentioned about how this book was really your coming back into teaching, and you writing about how you wanted to get over some of your own self-consciousness. What was the process actually like? How long did it take? Because there might be some listeners who would really love to write their own book or are in the process of writing one. So yeah, what was your experience like with that?
Well, like I mentioned before, I had this itch to write it. It was like it was bubbling out of me, the concepts and the thoughts. And I think if you've got that kind of, yearning to get something out, then it's such a great way of doing it at that time, because it is ready to go, you know. And so one of the things that I did was I set aside 2 hours. I had, you know, my kids at the moment. And so I figured I can do 2 hours per day, because that is also a great way of doing anything, of just the regular, consistent practice. And again, I find so many correlations between, say, when I was writing the book, and also just the process of getting through something, or getting through the self-consciousness, because it's about the small, consistent action steps that we take every day. So I found that with me doing that, the book took 6 months. And I think the writing process was kind of done in the maybe, I'd say 2, but I just went and I just did it. And then it was, after that, it was the kind of honing, refining, making sure I had, you know, some experts to help me, and research. So all of that process took 6 months. And then after that, I chose the route of self-publishing. So with writing a book, you know, you can choose to get it published, or you can self-publish it. And it depends on, you know, what you're looking to do. I mean, I know that I wanted this book to be for my students or for other singers out there. So I also just wanted to get it out quick and easy, you know. You could apply to a big publishing house, but that could take a lot longer. You know, there are different ways of doing it, but an easy way of doing it is just to self-publish on Amazon. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's doable.
And what is that process of self-publishing?
You need to have certain things in place. So you need to have a cover. You need to make sure that the book has certain standards, and Amazon has all of that in place. And the reason why I've gone for Amazon as well is because Amazon Marketplace will sell the book, you know, for you. You can also self-publish, and that would be, you would have all the selling rights, but it would mean you would need to market your book to an audience. You would need to sell it on your website. You would need to pack it. And whereas Amazon have this great way of, you know, it will kind of push it out into their markets for you. So I like that concept. So, I mean, there are choices, as with anything. It depends on what you're looking to do. But yeah, there are guidelines on Amazon, and I found that sort of made it easier as well. You just kind of go through and follow the steps. And same goes with publishing your audiobook. So, you know, I followed the steps for that, and I think it's a lot more doable than people think.
Oh, that's good. So if anybody is listening who is thinking about it, has a bubbling idea, what would be your main bit of advice?
I would say take the steps forward, and then armor yourself with the choices you've got. What kind of you know, how would you like this book to be sold? How would you know, would you like it to have backing, or are you going to just do it yourself? And then just kind of first of all, get the writing process out of the way. Just do it. There's no time like today, especially if you've got this idea bubbling. Just start. You know, it's a bit like the best way to write something is just to just get it all out, and then you can refine it. But I think a lot of people get stuck in that starting phase.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Where they've written something and it's taken them 10 years and they've just edited the same bit over and over again.
I know. And I'm a big believer actually of going with your wave of natural inspiration, because if you're going against the grain with anything, then it's just going to be, you know, your mind is going to be overthinking. It's just hard work. Whereas the way that I wrote this book, it was like it had to come out. So yeah. I love it. I love it when things are in flow like that. I try and live my life as much like that as possible if I can. Yeah. My brain gets in the way too much.
Oh God, yeah, mine. We need to put them somewhere else. Find a shelf for them. So what's next for you, Becky?
Yeah, so well, one thing that I'm going to do is I really want to continue helping students in this way, and helping them overcome their self-conscious side, and also just develop better vocal confidence. And so I think one of the best ways we can do with that is to be in a group format. And so I'm in works at the moment with the Sing Space community. We're going to run a challenge around the 1st of October. So look out for that around autumn time. And it's going to be this concept of we're all kind of together in a community and we're making steps, and we'll be using the book as a guideline. It'll be generally improving your vocal confidence and overcoming these mental barriers that can get in our way. So so I've left a link to my booking site where if you're interested in joining us for that, then you can get more information. It's something like Becky Gillespie vocal coach.as.me. I think that's the link, but you can get it in the show notes.
Yes, absolutely. Great. Well, Becky, thank you so much for joining me. It's been so lovely to chat about something that I think so many singers experience. And I've got my copy of your book on my Kindle and I've made my notes, so it's always a good reference. So thank you so much, Becky. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. And I love your podcast. I think it's so useful just to cover so many concepts and topics for singers. So thanks for doing that.
Oh no, thanks so much. I'll pay you later for that one.